off, just want to congratulate, I think everybody but maybe John ran last fall, and congratulations for your election. And
Thank you.
I became the dictator of the town, so I'll never have to run again.
Just got to work on the
Careful.
bottom account.
Bottom, right, and he's the commissioner of Bottom County.
Yes.
Might as well run the
Well,
state now.
For the first 15 or so years of my time in Delano, we had council transition at every election cycle, and then along came a period that you're going through now, where obviously the incumbents are reelected, and I know from a staff perspective and also a community member, it certainly it says a lot, and it's obviously a statement of confidence community, but also organizationally, I think, helps a lot from a staff perspective too, to know that there's consistency in leadership. So congratulations for that, and look forward to, like I said, working with you again tonight. Just a quick little overview. Jessica went through the items that you have in front of you tonight, all of which are resources to help in the discussion. We've obviously been through this a few years in a row, so you know the kind of the drill that I'll take you through tonight is a few questions that hopefully generate quite a bit of discussion amongst yourselves. The five of you obviously are the policy setters, the strategy, direction, and overall leadership for the city. So the hope tonight is to facilitate a discussion, allow you to share amongst yourselves, to share with staff, to take into consideration staff's input as well, and ultimately to end up with some goals to guide you in 2023. To get there, as Jessica outlined, we have the 2022 strategic plan, the document we put together after last year's session. We have that for you in your packet tonight. We will go through a series of questions similar, a little different in makeup, but generally trying to accomplish some of the same things. The goal of that obviously is to share individual perspectives and to come up with goals and build some consensus around the overall goals program. In discussion with Jessica, she shared with me, I think, the direction you've provided for staff and for me tonight. With respect to our overall strategic plan, in the past years, we've spent quite a bit of time on mission and values. That is sort of how the organization operates, your commitment to the community. Those things are ongoing and continue to be sort of the organizational culture that you have here. We also have spent time identifying sort of the why. Why are you here? Why are we doing what we're doing? What are those long-term core strategies? What is the overall direction? And previously identified 5 core strategies with some supporting objectives in your strategic plan. Typically speaking, those long-term strategies don't change much, and particularly when you've got the same people involved who set those and ratified those last year. And so typically those core strategies, they really shouldn't change much in their nature. Lastly, we have the what. What are we going to try and accomplish? Our short-term goals, our work plan, as we look ahead to the next year or two. What is it that we want to do? My understanding coming here tonight is you're comfortable with really the top portion of this, that you've previously discussed mission, values, core strategies. Obviously, you're all still in the same positions. And therefore, really what we've built the session tonight around is the last item. What are we trying to do, the goals and the work plan. So unless you direct me otherwise, my attention is going to be on helping us work through the latter. What are we trying to accomplish, and to focus our objective on the goals. So,
Sounds good.
is that the plan? All right. So to start with that, the first thing I'd like to walk us through is an evaluation of our goals. And I realized the print on there, those goal statements that we had last year from the high priority, there's 7 of them, a lot of text up there. Those goals are contained in a couple places here for you. First of all, they are identified, or I guess most importantly, they're identified on page 5 of our strategic plan for management. When we went through our goal setting last year, we identified around 20 potential goals. In going through the prioritization process, you selected these 7 as the high priority goals for 2022. There were priority goals as well, and then other brainstorm goals that didn't reach that top level. I'd like to focus the initial part of our discussion tonight on these higher priority goals. I do know that Jessica has distributed, your staff has distributed sort of a progress report, including some measurables and progress that towards those goals in terms of their accomplishment of the year. What I would like to do is take each of these 7, and I'd like to think about them in terms of evaluating them on how you feel individually the organization did on each one of those 7. I used to go through this sort of evaluation process and say put a letter grade A through F on it, how did you do? But there's often more nuance involved in that evaluation process, and I feel that that form of evaluation isn't really objectively beneficial to the organization. So I want us to think about each of those 7 goals on sort of a scale of we didn't make any progress, and that not necessarily, sometimes that could be related to organizational performance, but it might be related to something else. Maybe we set the goals in January, and by April and May they're relevant. If you think back a couple of years ago, we had a goal-setting session here in January of 2020, March of 2020, COVID hits, and maybe the goals that you had set in January really weren't relevant for that year anymore. The third sort of factor for evaluating these is thinking about the time allotted. As I look back to some of these goals, some of them were pretty aggressive in terms of trying to accomplish in a 1-year period. And so did we accomplish what would be reasonable in a 1-year period? Fourth, obviously, external impacts. Sometimes we can put forth great organizational effort, we can put forth great attention and time from the council's perspective, we can allocate the resources we need. Sometimes there's external things that come into play that prevent us from necessarily accomplishing what we want.
Can I ask a question? Is this interactive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did we ever look at these goals halfway through the year?
I think we did.
bring
When,
them back in about July.
I don't know if we had a lot of conversation on it, but I think they were in a
We just had
packet.
a
We should
status
probably
update.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good
we do
point.
that our team does that like halfway through the year to see how we're.
Yeah,
It's easy to get distracted and not actually
Definitely.
focus on these.
I
so-
think we did that 2 years ago. I think we brought it back a couple times maybe, but I don't know
Yeah,
if we had a
thi-
discussion on it this past year,
This
which
year we
maybe
went
just
back
got
in
overlooked.
July, but I think we might have been one of our busier nights.
Yeah, I know, it
Oh,
was at
that'll
the
be-
end of the packet,
Yeah, I'm
not at the
sure that
beginning of the
we-
packet.
So maybe that is that would be a great strategy for us to make sure, and I'll
Yeah.
I think I'd like to add that into, maybe we do a March check-in, a July check-in, and
Mm-hmm.
an October as in building the calendar for the year.
Sounds good to me.
That seems,
Can you refresh my memory? When did Brad leave relative to this? Was it after we set goals?
it was before we set
Before.
goals. He left in November and we did a,
She
almost,
started.
yeah, in January we did goals, and it wasn't until April until.
I was going to
goals
give
transition.
that as an example of other factors that might have changed, but apparently not, so.
Well, we were kind of in limbo though, because I think some of them were like name a city administrator,
Yeah,
some of our last goals, so we're kind of in that in between time.
and we got Kathy on board, and we're getting some more of these things moving forward.
I do think that, in Delano and other cities that I work with, finding that kind of that sweet spot for the mid-year check-in or the quarterly check-in, whatever it might be, is helpful for both staff and council to kind of keep the focus and keep awareness of these things. So, with all that as a background, think of the sort of these 4 stages. No progress, The second stage being, yeah, we achieved some of the goal, and we achieved some progress. Hopefully Kevin's proud of me for the third, disclaimer, substantially complete. Engineering, construction lingo of, yeah, we maybe didn't polish it up, but we're about 80% done with it, and good enough that we accomplished the overall objective. And then the last one was the goal accomplished, and while it's not one of your top 7, Mayor Tom, as you said, on the priority list was hire a city administrator. Well, you accomplished that goal as an example, so. As we look at those 7 goals, I'd like everybody to just kind of take a note, where you think you ended up on each of these 7. I'll give you a couple minutes, and then we can just kind of share with the group. I should point out as well that this was one of the documents that you have in front of you, and I put it together so you have each slide with some note space on the bottom, so as we go through, you can use that for that.
We're good.
Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to ask for a quick show of hands for each one of these. And then once we get done with them, we could do a little bit of debrief and maybe some discussion about maybe where there was some differences of opinion on this.
Is this, so can I ask a question on, is it this, so this is specifically related to the council's actions or the city as an aggregate? Because, for example, council talked about, like, number 1, but a lot of that stuff happened outside of council, but happened with other entities. Does that count as something?
I think this is an organizational way.
Okay.
It's not a grade for the organizational discussion. So what is you, as a group, what did you collectively accomplish?
Okay.
So this first one, people had no progress. Some. One, two, three, seven, substantial. One, goal accomplished. Might have missed some things, but. How about the second one, complete review of specific sections of the zoning code, no progress?
This one was tough because it's like constantly evolving.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
new
Well,
ones.
Yeah, and there was a very specific list, I think, of.
Yeah.
them in there, but.
And
When I
we're
look at-
somewhat limited in just the ability to accomplish all of
Right.
them at a time, but we've made some significant progress on,
So-
like, our priorities.
We reviewed them too, but we maybe didn't come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
That's true, and it
So
just says complete
review
the
is-
review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just think they're in process till we actually adopt something.
Yeah.
So how many people had some progress?
I did some plus. I cheated because I'm.
I'm going with
I'll go with that too.
some plus.
I can't help it.
Anybody substantial, anybody accomplished?
We're so close. We're moving, like, we
Yeah.
have some of the.
One more week.
like,
Yeah, literally,
one more.
for some of these.
We're
How
gonna,
about reviewing options for infrastructure revenue increases? I abbreviated this, I think. Anybody have no progress? Some?
We haven't actually adopted that yet, have we, Kevin?
No.
Okay, then I'll do some.
And I'll do some with that definition.
Substantial, anybody have
I
substantial?
went a little bit more than that, because we talked about the different varieties.
yeah.
I think we have a vision for. It depends on. I guess we've reviewed the options. It hasn't been implemented, so this is where I think we struggled even.
Yeah.
How do we set our measurable goals? We
And-
have a vision. It's just not implemented yet.
And and we have done some of the infrastructure revenue increases for TLAC. We updated it twice
I'll
this year. so,
bump
like,
myself up to
Some of
substantial.
it is substantial, but some of it isn't.
I'll just use the word review, because review in this case, I think looking at them is sufficient, because in theory, we couldn't have implemented some of them. So I'll bump mine up too.
Okay.
Not to say it has to be perfect anyways.
All right, so the fourth item, park dedication, park needs, review updates, including mapping of the park property and potential Three Rivers collaboration. Any no progress? Any some? Any substantial?
I was some.
We updated the fees,
We updated.
but we
Yeah,
didn't
that
do
was a
anything
huge
with
part to me.
park needs, really.
Yeah, yes, we
There's-
looked at the,
We never did an inventory of what
No.
we
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
for easements or anything like that.
That's been bugging me for a while.
Yeah, we should.
the-
I know,
so
I think it's
the
on
inventory
something
is
coming
one
up.
of the things that I have now with the GIS capability. We're working on the inventory, so we're like, so
Good.
close.
That'll be great.
We've been getting the layers set up, so we're like,
Three Rivers has done more work on
So
this than
close.
us also.
oh, well, we have been meeting with them last several weeks to go over the cooperative agreements. We've like, haven't let it stop, we're just taking.
None of this is an indictment on you.
Oh, I know, I'm just like, we're really making progress. and it's,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, I
I'm
think if we
looking
did this
forward to
whole
the
exercise
accomplishment.
in a month and 2 months, we'd have different,
Yeah.
we'd
But
have
just have the
substantially
same
different
goals.
in a couple months.
Let's vote for the same goals and then go home.
We have to add some short-term objectives.
Yes, I'm just teasing. This is
All right.
good. I like this.
Item 5, developing a long-term financial model, including future revenue forecast, comprehensive infrastructure financial planning, and long-term tax rate trend analysis. Any no progress? Some? Substantial?
I'm right on the borderline on that.
Some plus again, Kevin?
Yeah.
All right.
Just make it up.
Ask Maggie where she feels that is. That's
Yeah.
honestly where I'd feel it is if
Yeah.
she's
I think,
on a lot of that.
I'd say one thing is missing, it's probably, we don't really understand the costs of a road long-term, or the value of a home or a business in terms of, is it generating net revenue for the city, or is it consuming more services than it funds?
Yeah.
That'd be a next step, but that's why I say substantially complete and not done.
Gotcha.
Any other comments on that? How about reviewing code enforcement policy, and impacts on staff and budget? Any no progress?
I'm gonna say no, not in the last year.
Any some progress? Or any substantial?
Right.
Okay. I think that puts us, with our 8. How do, John, you said no, how do you,
I just don't remember talking about it during, this changed, it seemed like to me it changed a year ago, and it hasn't been discussed since, but I'm open to not being,
I think we did
Out in
one.
the spring, we talked
Did
about
a
Yeah.
spring work
What
session
we were
on
gonna
it.
focus on.
And
Yeah,
what we were gonna focus on, and then we, enacted some changes on that feedback.
like the fence
For- Like
changes.
the fence change and that, but, I think one of the things I had on my list of the, if I'm gonna use Kevin's plus thing, is that in one of the things we focused on in the 2024 budget is that planning assistant can help us take on some more in-house code enforcement as well, so.
I'll go none plus then.
So, even we were thinking about it for next year as well.
trendsetter over there? Okay. All right, the last high priority goal you had was consider current methods of communication and public involvement. I did summarize this. It goes on to say including the website and newsletter to share codes, requirements, city information, and explore/implement preferred alternatives. Any no progress? Any some progress? Substantial?
I'm right on the border there between those two.
And any accomplished?
I'm the abstention.
You abstained, all right. All right, any comments or discussion on that item?
I don't think we really changed anything from our use of the web page and the newsletter. In that regard, we may be putting a little bit more content on our web page,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
and we didn't really do much for sharing codes. per
Yeah,
se.
and that's an item that we've got some
Yeah.
quotes and need to kind of continue to move that forward to get codes.
But we added a position with a half allocation toward communication.
And that will be, so it's been posted, that was one of the changes that we did late in the year. So that's been posted and hopefully we'll have someone on board in the next month.
And I think the big one is in the draft of the PUD requiring community meetings for PUDs before it gets to preliminary plat. Is a huge increase in public involvement. And then giving points to the inclusion of feedback from those who involve themselves. Those are big steps.
We did get new utility bills, so people can put more information out. And there are some incremental changes,
Mhm.
but still can always work on.
All right, so you have 7 high priority goals, and I think the takeaway is you've made progress on all of them. You have, in your minds, you're probably in different places in terms of whether you view that to be sort of some or substantial, but generally speaking, you've made some progress on all of these. And I think, as I stated before, sometimes there's a variety of reasons why. Some of these goals are pretty significant in terms of the time allocated. You did have, I think last year, Jennifer, or Jessica, I'm sorry, was our interim at the time we did this, and we went through the transition, and then we had the open administrative services position, so a lot of other factors in play there as well. So with that, I also would, if you could look at page 5 of that strategic plan document, there were some other priority goals. Were there any, we won't go through this exercise with those 6 items on there. We mentioned item 5 was consider applicants hire and onboard a city administrator. There were 5 other goals on there. Any
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got
number
that.
Number
You
five.
2 done on the priority list, and number 1, at least some.
Where is this, Jess?
On the.
At the bottom of
page
where we
number
just were, and then on,
6
On this
of
page,
the.
the thing you don't have,
oh,
You need a
okay,
copy?
6 and 7.
you get goal to prepare council members to come to meetings.
Yeah, my
prepared.
pack, I did read it. It's still sitting on my counter.
It is right. I'll grab you a copy here.
Yeah, we definitely made some
Some
progress
progress.
on 1. 2, I'd say complete, or, yeah, we
Yeah,
facilitated
okay.
it.
Thanks, Jess.
We got,
It's not in the ground yet, but we've done everything to get it to that point.
yeah, Sabrina used to facilitate that. We've been
Bridge Planning Commission.
on some of those other ones.
We think on number 3.
I don't think we've encouraged them to do much.
Yeah,
Planning Commission's always been a reactive
yeah.
body in this city, and it's, if we're gonna ask them to explore stuff, we have to give them a budget to do
True.
that kind of thing.
That's fair.
Or wait for the housing to slow down. So we
Have a
can
minute to breathe.
have them do other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a lot to ask.
there have been months where there haven't been meetings
That's true.
that they could have used for that, if we had maybe given them a list of specific things we wanted them to discuss.
Yeah, but we still need to allocate staff resources for them to provide information, you know, even in those cases.
So maybe that's a topic for when we're setting our 23 is, do we want to try to come up with something like that, or?
I get a sense that they're all gassed anyways.
Yeah.
So like having a day off, I don't know,
Yeah, I hear you.
but
Depend, I get.
Gassed or aghast?
both. Yes.
4, 5, and 6. 5, yes, that's complete. Um,
I think 4 is some progress.
yeah,
Further develop water improvement plan.
other than the logo.
Like I said, $10 will get you a logo. It's not that hard.
Oh, but a good logo if the 5 of us would agree on.
And then I think the last one on there was developing an economic development, marketing, and business development plan. So those were your 7 high and then your 6 priority goals. Progress on a number of them, check marks on a few. Keep this list in mind. We're gonna kind of set it aside for now, but our main objective by the end of the evening is to come up with a brainstorm list of potential goals and submit this. There's likely a number of them that likely are still a priority for you, whether there's some tweaking and sort of next steps, but this will be a good starting point for that discussion. Everybody okay if we move off discussing last year's goals?
Mm-hmm.
All good? All right, so the first question, I have 4 different questions tonight, I think, to try and come at what we would call environmental assessment, sort of as just taking the perspective of the organization, of the community, both the community culture, the physical features, and then the services you provide, and trying to look at it 4 different ways as we go through discussion. The first question I want the group to contemplate is, as we think back to where we were, and you've already started some of that discussion, when we talked about where we're at with the goals. But where are we at today that is different from where we were last year? And I guess you can take that question a variety of ways, but when you think of the city, the organization, the culture, the services you're providing, what are some of the things that have changed over the last year? And give you some time to think about it, jot some notes, or if you want to just kind of roll with it and throw them out as you think. we could certainly
I think last year at this time, when we had this, was it last year, a year ago, that one person, it might have been you, that didn't actually come in person?
It was
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like even though that was 2 years ago, that I have a better idea the continuity of the city council is a big thing, and understanding that, at least in the room tonight, only one person has changed. So I feel like I have gotten the opportunity to know everybody a little better, and so I think that's good. And it has changed.
Good one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you get a kind of a sense where someone's thought process is going. So it helps you in trains of thought when we're up here talking about different things. I think we're in a better staffing position than we were a year ago. But I also think we're probably faced with a lot more complex issues than we had a year ago. And which has raised this, over that year, we've seen different things, and I think we have more of a need now than ever to dig into some things that were set in place years ago.
We seem to have greater access to state and federal projects. I guess county level, not really county level, but with the Park District's trail, we seem to be, at some level, more likely to be a recipient of
And we got state
things.
and federal funding and county funding for stuff. For once.
We didn't think that was possible 2 years ago. Thought it was unlikely a year ago.
Yeah.
I think it was, a year ago, it was like the people who lived here for 40 years in Ravinia. And I think that we've had an active new group of population
Definitely.
that it's kind of helped a little bit on that, in that respect.
Do we have better partnerships with neighboring cities than we had a year ago? I know we worked a lot with Medina on Hackamore.
I think that project has helped us work a lot with Medina in particular.
I would think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think staff might, with Medina compared to maybe historically.
Yeah, I think staff has always had a decent relationship. I think it's been more of, I think it has been better when there's more to gain by having a focus on the road, I think is maybe the difference, instead of being able to point fingers at them. Well, I think as staff, I would say that we continue to grow the relationships as there's more people and more time. I don't think that we had at staff that I've seen really too much friction with the neighboring communities. We share equipment a lot, and PD has a lot of shared resources, so I think maybe it's a perception that we're not getting along or anything, but I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think it's been more of an evolution to tying a lot of those together, that when you look back historically, that there was a couple of years where I think just city government-wise, Corcoran was viewed as slightly dysfunctional or up and down, some ebbs and flows. And I think starting around the time that Brad started here, really started building that reputation for consistency. And I think that has carried through, and I think we've been able to be consistent for a number of years now. And so we've had good relationships with the cities around us, but as we've been adding 800 people a year, and to your point, more active people coming into our community, I think that's extended our brand to get more recognition outside of our immediate circle. So I think we're seeing more recognition outside of our immediate neighbors as we travel inward or outward, that people are kind of taking note of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and kind of viewing us more as a valued partner, which I think is in turn creating more opportunities for us. And I think we're having more people reach out to us and want to work with us because of that, what we've been able to maintain for, the better part of the last 8-9 years, probably.
Makes sense. If I have anything else to add?
lot of different, a lot of observations, I think, of, in terms of organization and culture-wise. Physically speaking, any differences do you feel like in the community? Is anything, I realize 1 year is a short window of time. Ravinia or these other neighborhoods you're talking about, yeah, you built a couple hundred more houses, but they're still the same general neighborhoods. Any other physical changes community-wide?
Not a ton, but ask us in a year,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
internet.
A lot more commercial growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've started to see
Industrial, yeah.
commercial, industrial interest and development for the first time, really, on a big scale.
We've done all the legwork to get all of that ready to go, and now it just needs
Needs to
to do
get
the
built.
final processes to get there. We broke ground on St. Therese this year. And it's gonna have some big changes to downtown and starting to see some big things.
Have we had a development falter and ask for concessions at the same level as we've had this last year in the past?
What do you mean falter?
Like Cook Lake coming in and asking for modifications to break their development into pieces so they could plat them separately.
That was in this past year, wasn't it?
Yeah, but is that new? Like, have we ever been asked for that kind of thing before?
I don't think that we have, because it's one of those, like, we haven't had a development quite like that before. So I think that being our first type of mixed resident, like truly mixed residential, I think that's the first time we've seen that. And I think we will likely, they're asking to come in and do some more PUD potential amendments and talk at a work session upcoming. So I think we'll do that, but.
I've been here 7 years and everyone always asks for stuff. So
Hmm.
that part is not new, in my opinion. Like when your neighborhood was being built, it's like every week we had someone in here wanting something different than they had agreed to.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Ravinia in particular had a lot of changes from initial to.
Yeah, I
still
probably
going on.
got your email, I still have the emails you guys personally wrote.
I don't think so on Ravinia.
No, there was some changes as they were building that they wanted and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one is just so unique because of the residential and commercial aspect of it. I don't think we've had anything like that other than Bass Lake Crossing South with the mini storage is probably the closest thing to that kind of thing, and they were really uniquely separate.
Yeah.
I think the only comment I would add is, as we get more developments like Cook Lake, it does, I'll call stress some of our processes that we're a growing city, so our processes are evolving. So anytime we get into a new type of development, whatever that is, it kind of stresses our systems and our policies until we figure out what we want. So I think
Mhm.
that's what I heard out of your comments, maybe just stated from staff's perspective. That everything we do new, it's great, we all want to establish it, but it does generate a lot of staff-intensive work, just kind of set us up for the next one that comes in.
Yeah, and, look at something like the concept plan we just saw for Hope. That'll be kind of taking that type of development to the next level on a bigger scale of mixture of uses and types and intensities, density and all that.
Exactly. Really starting to see those pieces of our comp plan that we've talked about and envisioned really starting to come together.
Yep.
So, exciting.
We know how expensive water's gonna be.
You're in different places.
Much more expensive than we had envisioned.
Everything is.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's move on to, second question. Again, think of the same four, sort of ways to look at the city and your organization. What are the challenges that you see coming in the next year or two, that will impact any of those different areas?
Will be some of the things we already talked about, right? There's gonna be more demand on growth and more demand on staff because of it. There's gonna be more public input because people will be impacted and won't like what they see. So I see a lot of more difficult conversations in this year and the next year ahead, like we've seen in the last year, probably amplified
Yeah.
as we develop out in areas that have never had development.
Mm-hmm.
Has the housing market slowed down affected?
Not here yet. That
Doesn't seem
Yeah,
like it.
we had about 200 new homes, which is terrible, and we do, in St. Therese, we haven't seen it quite as bad as in other,
yeah.
what I've heard other communities are facing, but certainly,
They have inventory today. They did not have inventory a year ago.
yes, that's a good way.
There definitely was a little pause in the fourth quarter of last year, but I think I saw today like 20 some permits get pushed through that we just received. So it's really hard to look in a snapshot. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you one way. Uncertainty is the best way to do it, but I don't think it'll flatline in Corcoran, but.
So I was doing a little sleuthing a few months ago on school districts, and I looked up rankings. So of the 5 districts in Corcoran, there's 342 districts in the state. We have number 1, number 18, number 54, number 85, and number 107. So all of them in the top third, and that probably underlies some of that strength. It's an asset that we're very lucky to have, that we didn't really do anything to create, but that provides a lot of resilience and value to the community.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens when number 1 develops out. That'll be the big indicator, because we can't build age-targeted homes forever.
Yep.
So,
I think, yeah, I mean, just based on that alone, the residential is gonna slow considerably for single-family homes, I think.
Well, yeah, maybe just look at our maps of where we have single-family home type use in the comp plan. Most of it is taken up and stuff that's maybe not built yet, but it's gone through the approval process compared to what's available in the future.
Yeah.
There's some, but
So Buffalo High School's like 20 mile, I'm in Buffalo,
Mhm.
and 1 mile east of me is in Buffalo. So
Right.
like, I don't know where that's on the rankings,
That's number 54.
but,
okay.
but, probably people don't wanna move to 20 miles from their high
Yeah,
school.
that's a haul,
Yeah,
especially going kind of the opposite.
same with
direction a lot.
Rockford,
Yep.
and, you know, I think there's a little piece of Delano down in our
Yeah.
town.
So-
Osseo Maple Grove a little bit. That actually, we have just a tiny sliver of that. So, and there's no real opportunity. There was, I guess, but that's 55 plus right now.
Yeah.
So, those schools are far away now.
yeah, I'd be curious to know, as something to put down on your list, because we have one active development going that's building out in Rockford, right? How are those permits going? Because that's not an age-targeted community. Some commu-
Rush Creek.
Yeah,
I would say first and second edition are almost all through building permit. And they started, first and half a second are through. They kind of face second to the end, but we saw, I know they probably have 6 in the last 2 months. Probably more natural growth than what we saw. I mean, we saw some pretty big spikes there, so it's hard. We're just still such a short timeline to be able to
Yeah.
make any predictions. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's statistics,
And because of the state of the cities this week, I have the permits issued for Rush Creek Reserve. We've had 88 of the 186 of the platted lots permitted, so.
Yeah,
Where's that one again?
the one right
By
north
the
of
park.
10.
Oh, by the park, yeah.
And Ravinia only has 3 permits left to be issued
Really?
of the platted lots.
Wow.
In Ravinia, yeah.
Yep.
And Tavera's not even close to building out into
Yeah, Tavera
Rockford School
has-
District.
Mostly, it's a weird combo of Wayzata and Rockford.
Right. But the Rockford portion will be like one of the last additions to
Yeah,
go in.
yep.
And that's a different style home,
Right.
so.
Then there's just north of Hackamore, that's still Wayzata School District on the corner
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sure that'll be soon.
Probably.
So we've discussed largely development impacts, challenges. What other challenges do we see? Infrastructure, parks?
We have a humongous bill coming for the water. And then, not to mention, large funding need for the park.
More than just the one, truly, but that's on the plate.
Yeah, part of our goal setting was identify areas for parks. And we have not identified any dollars for buying parks, and land is becoming very expensive right on the edge, and it's still reasonable a little bit on the outside the edge, but we just don't have the funding. We haven't created a mechanism for closing that loop.
Roads as well. I mean, it's always been an issue and probably always will be an issue, but continue to chip away at it.
Just roads in general or funding?
Funding,
I think just roads is,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
there's
a
so
lot you
much
could say
about it.
Yeah,
Well, and the need for public, safety stuff, right? I mean, you look at the police newsletter, most of it's medical stuff now. So,
Mhm.
It's all the pieces that go with the growth and development. The infrastructure, the human component, the businesses, how does that all grow with it?
I think finding staffing in every
Mhm.
line of business is a challenge for the city, so I think just the job market's tough across the board, especially in obviously in the police and fire world, it's critical. I know Public Works is struggling to find people as well.
you know,
Matt brought up, as we get more land value in the northern part of the city, the effect on fire costs is
Mhm.
not related to demand for fire services, but cost of the housing that's being protected, or whatever building is being protected.
yeah. That's good.
Proportional to property values as opposed to service demand.
Is that the only area that has that problem? Or are they all
think
that
it's-
way?
They're all that way.
But I think it's the most direct
I think it is the
in the
most
contract, the
direct.
most,
in
it's
Rogers.
close, yeah, in the
It's the
Rogers.
only one that has the only market value.
Only market value, the other
others
ones have
have-
market value and calls for service.
Yeah,
It's a little bit different, so the other two are market value and calls for service as a portion of their overall budget. So it would impact our percentage as the department's budget changes, where with Rogers, it's primarily formulaic it's not tied to their final budget, it's tied to, our market value, and a percentage of that market value is what our payment cost is.
So are we then It's not a part of their total budget. Are they being effectively subsidized by Corcoran?
In a way, yes. So we're more, I'd say that agreement is set up as more of a subscriber to their service, where other ones, maybe it's more arranged like we're a partner in their
Okay.
operations.
Any chance that could get renegotiated?
Everything's possible. I don't know what.
Is it due soon or anything like that, where?
It's a perpetual
Ongoing, isn't it?
renewal on
Yeah.
it, so it's when we would decide to change things, or when we would ask that to change.
I think we started that agreement in 1884, if I
Oh, wow.
recall
Don't remember. It could be.
correctly.
Might be worth thinking about. That's the best model for us.
Oh.
Any challenges going on with community culture? What's happening with the different organizations, institutions?
I think the people moving in are moving in from more urban areas, so their expectations of what government should provide from them is way different than people who are independent, more independent. Like, for example, internet.
If I asked this question in our city, that would be the number one. Same text.
Yeah, it hasn't been, you'd think it'd be way more profound, especially since, like, even on the council, like, Dean and I would be kind of the traditional rural people, and these guys are more urban, but it really hasn't been, we've disagreed, but we disagree on topical things, but philosophically, we're similar enough that, and we agree on a lot of different things. So in this council, we're able to do it, I think.
Alan's out there in the rural side too yet. Don't leave him out of the rural.
Yeah, he's like a,
Halfway in between. But,
it's like
I
an
mean, the
urban
internet,
cowboy.
the internet thing
It-
is
it-
really more of an expectation on the existing residents in the rural area.
Yeah,
right?
that-
Because the
That's
new
where the need
residents
is.
have it as part of their development.
Yep.
It came as part of that. It's basically the underserved areas.
That's probably true,
And
yeah.
outside that have, but I think more residents, I think the cultural makeup of residents coming to the community is different. But I don't see, or I don't think I've heard of any clashes of any kind in that regard.
They're more likely to be disappointed in the way their builders operate than how the city operates.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's much we can do about some of that,
No.
but.
And then just the element of what's happened over the last 2 years and the people working from home and those kind of things. I wouldn't be complaining about internet and stuff if my wife wasn't working at home 100% of the time and needing that connection. and
I guess,
stuff.
yeah. I want to rescind what I said about having the internet be an example, because
Well, it still kind of is.
it was an expectation of the people that moved in, I guess. So,
I think
and they
that-
got it.
Yeah, but it's still an expectation too of even the rural folks wanting.
Yeah, I think the underlying thing of what
Wanting
you're
to
saying of some
develop.
of those expectations is true. I don't know if I agree that the internet one,
That's why I rescinded.
yeah, right, is the best way to illustrate, like you said, you rescinded it. But there, like, we're starting to see it with some of the trail discussions and plowing and stuff like that. I know we had a group reach out to us, and then also Jess and I were at a event up in Bellwether and had a lot of those type of questions. So there's definitely that, I don't wanna call it an issue, but that change happening.
Yeah, as we have these little pocketed neighborhoods on dirt roads, all of a sudden they want to not have to have a four-wheel drive vehicle to get back out on 30.
Well, I think you'll see some of it like too, like in the rural area, right? You're not used to having parks or whatnot. Your kids played in their
True,
bigger
yeah.
yards with their friends and whatnot, and you move into a developed neighborhood with really tall yards. The dependence on parks in that area is really high, right? So they use it as a recreational source. So there's more of a shift in that regard. And I think too, is if you look at what like our city park used to be, it was, you know, ball fields and a volleyball field and a hockey rink and stuff. And you're just gonna see more demand for different types of things as you have,
Splash pad.
yeah, younger families or families that have different cultural interests, like, you know, cricket and things like that, right?
Pickleball.
Pickleball, and
Yeah.
all those sorts of things that we didn't have years ago. People are gonna start wanting those different amenities.
I think just the community growth presents challenges, and, you know, we talk about it, we see it all the time, but I think, hear the biggest, you know, all of the struggles that go with new developments and new businesses. And I think the loudest pushback we hear are in the more suburban areas already, more so than, you would expect the greatest pushback to come from more rural areas, seeing that come in. And actually, I've heard the most pushback on developments from people that are already in suburban areas, saying, I moved out here so I didn't have to look at this, but now that's developing and there's frustration where, and I see that actually more on our suburban, higher density areas, but I don't know how you avoid that as your community develops and grows. Everybody wants the businesses and wants the tax base, they just don't want to see it.
I resemble that remark.
Everyone wants to come in and shut the door behind them.
Or like the hunting kind of stuff, like gunshots are,
Yeah.
Although that's one to me that I feel like we haven't
Yeah.
seen a ton of, that I thought maybe we would start to see some more of that.
let's go on next door.
Oh, I stay away. Maybe that's why I stay away from there.
We do this pretty regularly with the
Yeah.
gunshots complaints.
Okay.
I think another one would be the connectedness and trail, like crossings
sports shooting.
and infrastructure and the expectation of being able to be walkable.
Mhm.
As we grow, we're just gonna have to figure some of that out.
Yep.
What? To be walkable?
Just our communities to be
connected
walkable.
trails.
and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Connections even within the communities and how
Sure.
we think about that.
Yeah.
Especially across those county roads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it's that build out, because even when, you know, to us, it feels like Bellwether's been here forever, but there may only be 150 homes of the 500 that are actually moved in 3.5 years later, and we're been hearing about it for 5 years, so it feels like it's done. But those neighborhoods are really evolving. I think
Mhm.
Ravinia's got 5 homes left and they're done, and that was started in 2014, so that's 10 years later. It's actually probably feels like its own community, or very near feeling its own community is gonna start to evolve more as people settle in. So I think the challenge is Cummings is the perfect spot for it, because we might have sensed it would come, but now I don't even know if it's even really hit us yet. I think
Right.
the next 1 to 3 years we'll really learn how the new residents and what their expectations are.
Yeah, I think once we start to see, we'll see some of these new St. Therese type places go in, which will add a whole nother dynamic, but then you have not only Ravinia done, but Tavera midway through, Rush Creek Reserve maybe mostly done, Bellwether or Amberley mostly done or entirely done. That's gonna have a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, I think we just crossed the
yeah.
1,000 home meter threshold, so we have 1,000 people actually living, or 1,000 homes. But if you were to calculate all the
utilities?
lots we platted, we still have like, you know, 2/3 of that to fill out yet. So it's gonna take some time, and then those neighborhoods kind of figure out what they want and what the needs are and what they're gonna ask for, so I think that's coming.
Yeah.
How they ask may still be coming, and we'll figure that out.
I think it's, and maybe this is just a designation I made in my head, but once neighborhoods start to get to the point, the new neighborhoods where where they're about to take over their own HOA, or they do that, it seems to be when start to get more of the questions and more of the identity of what they're trying to ask for and figure out.
what they like or don't like,
Mhm.
where their expectations were when they moved in.
Yep.
What are their expectations gonna be? So I think that's, a lot of those neighborhoods are still coming.
I believe that does count downtown as well, 1,000 the meters is
All meters.
downtown connection, but all meters in general. When in 2017, when Jeannie left, we had 78.
Wow.
So we,
Does meters for what?
water.
Water
Water specifically, okay.
Water specific meter.
So when those turn on and we start billing them, that's a good way for us to judge.
It's a
who's-
good
Yeah.
counter, good counter.
Yeah.
So,
So it's that balance, then we know, but you know how much in stock between building permits and meters. We know
Yeah.
how much is coming, and then we know between what's been final platted and
Yeah.
out there, so you can kind of know where the wave is, but
No.
everyone's been correct. I think in 2022, they didn't have enough lots for sale, so I think we were choked back a little bit, the 200, but then the market really in the tail end of 2022 paused everything. So there is a lot of inventory out there if it were to reinvigorate. They don't have to come in, there's a lot that they can sell off before they have to come in most of these neighborhoods.
Are you guys getting in the conversations about a lot of these new residents want restaurants, want coffee shops, want these kind of things? And I'll say, where do you want us to put them? We'll enter downtown. Where do you want our downtown? And they're like, yeah, we don't have a downtown, do we? So, I mean,
It's in the comp plan.
There's-
yeah, we have a plan for
we
downtown.
have this downtown, but then we've got
This is
a whole nother
coming.
thing possibly on the north side and such. But then when I talk about, like with folks in Bellwether, what about we need a gas station, we need a convenience store. Where do you want it? Well, not next to us, someplace else. Well, do you understand what the properties along 101 are intended for and such? And then it sparks a whole nother conversation that we don't want the noise, we don't want the traffic, and it's like, you kind of started it by moving in. So it
I've got,
sucks.
sorry, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go
I
ahead.
just had a
Oh.
thought pop in my head, that's gonna be a big one, 610,
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
that's going to,
that connection
Change things
is gonna
dramatically.
change a lot on that,
What level of discretion do we have on how that works?
not much.
very little.
Not much.
That
Because
connection
they've
will be-
planned it, and it's
That's
in
coming.
Maple Grove, so we don't have a whole lot of connection.
That'll be
ability
3/4 of a
here.
mile into Maple Grove, right?
Yeah,
On 30 there?
yeah, half mile, 3/4.
I think
Yeah,
the
something
bigger
like
issue is
that.
gonna be, they
How
build it
does
up
it-
on the Maple Grove, that it dumps into and then goes in that little stretch of Maple Grove before it hits Corcoran, and then it goes into the existing 30.
Yeah.
Too
It's
late.
not gonna work too well, yeah.
It'll be entertaining in this winter time. Enough, the cars go in the ditch now, like.
It'll be
people-
chaos,
People get there and it's icy.
yeah.
That'll be kind of fun for us residents
Just
to,
go park out there.
116 and 30 will be a nightmare at that light.
oh, it'll be
It will
terrible.
be.
Yeah,
It's
crazy.
it's almost
Yeah.
terrible now.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be hard, just on the county constantly about it.
And Kevin and I have talked about how do we build some of those connections with, we were just talking last week, because that's one of the priorities we see is how do we get the we're not even on the map for anything to really be reconstructed on County Road 30.
Right.
It's
but-
baffling.
But I mean, I think our conversation is now that we've gained some traction through everyone's efforts with some of these representatives, are there ways to engage them further and involve the state? Like, as the state, it's the county's road, but can we partner with the county to some level? And also collaborate with Maple Grove to some level to possibly get money from the state because they're putting 610 3/4 of a mile from our town.
Right.
And it's a deficient roadway. So a lot of meat and potatoes in there, but would that be something, what would it even look like, what would it take? And then we'd have to come back to you and say, do you want us, is this a goal for us to pursue? They're long-term plays. They're 3 to 5 year plus plays to make anything happen, but is that something we want to spend resources on? We haven't historically, but is that something we want to do? That's what we're working on and would present to you at some point.
Gotcha. That'll be an exciting one.
It kind of partners with even the Highway 55 conversation
Mhm.
we had with Pioneer, like, those are long-term plays, and how much resources do we want to put into that?
Right.
It's that resource allocation, competition thing that we don't have enough of.
It's, the reps, I mean, it's a conversation the five of us can have, just on the council, because we interact with them, but right now, the reps that serve our community have no voice at the legislature.
That's also true.
We're kind of screwed from that standpoint. We are not on the Met Council's board that recommends traffic, or that recommends roadways. We don't have a voice there. We are not, we don't have any the representative from our town actually represents Maple Grove to the county. He has a totally different agenda than anyone Corcoran might want, or what Corcoran might. They want to spend money on light rail. You know, it's the same old conversation.
I think making as public of statements as we can, and we have on some of those areas we know are bad. 30 and 19 is bad now, and when you figure 610 dumping into there for people heading west, you can only imagine, not to mention the 116, and, I mean, if we can we know the negative side effects that are gonna come with that increased traffic, and I think the more public we can be about that now, you know, we've been met with, I guess it's fallen on deaf ears, the requests we've made in the past for improvements. They haven't done much at like 30 and 19, and quite simply, the metrics that they use don't measure up, and I'm not a fan of the metrics that they use. That's what they count, and if we can tell them ahead of time, just so you know, here's our problems, this is
Yeah.
gonna be bad when you don't do anything. As those metrics start catching up, we're probably positioned better to try and leverage a solution maybe at that point, if we know we're playing the long game.
Yeah, just unfortunately, some of those metrics are bad things. A
Yeah.
lot of them,
Things that aren't acceptable to our community, but might be acceptable and
seem to be, yeah.
Would we even want 30 to expand, though? I mean, that just exacerbates through traffic problems if we,
I think
Got that wide
some
out.
level of work needs to be done on what that looks like, who knows?
There's so many houses that dump right onto 30 though, you know?
All of them, yeah, all the way out to 19, the driveways there. I'm always nervous about.
Yeah, you expand that road, you're gonna have a house right off somebody's front step. It's gonna be like
true.
driving through Richfield, you know?
Because it's 4 lanes on the Maple Grove side, isn't it?
It is.
It's a parkway,
Yeah.
Yep. It
supposed to
wasn't
go
always.
slower than a 4-lane.
Wasn't always, that was quite,
That's what was said, we're gonna build a parkway and then limit the speed. Boy, we got
that
people all by me at 65, 70 miles an hour on that parkway. It's crazy, just like that.
Well, my understanding is it became the 4-lane because Maple Grove was willing to pay for the improvements.
Yep.
The county can take the same stances. If you want something different, go ahead and build it and.
They have that Maple Grove money.
Rather than them resolving the problem.
Yeah, we could do a couple, work sessions just on that strategy, and so.
yeah.
But that's what we need, I mean, the basic question is where do we wanna, what's our priorities, where do we wanna put our energy? We got a million spots we could put it.
Right.
So, you know, helps, your feedback helps us know where to put our energy.
Well,
Is
I
this-
think
or sorry,
we're
go ahead.
looking at this as a threat, and I think there's also the opportunity that comes from it as well. I mean, we have areas that we want to feed for business and for that, and how do you make lemonade out of lemons? I mean, we see that road's coming, so what can the city do to make the best of it, I guess, would be the.
Yeah,
other-
we've invested in the 101, Brockton interchange to
Yeah.
kind of have that area develop, and maybe a similar type conversation for that area and a wider space too. But I had one, maybe this gets into more of a future conversation, Kevin, do you have any sense on when the timeline for 610 is now? All I've seen is that been a bunch on Maple Grove council agendas recently about it, so it seems like it's moving fast. I know they got a big chunk of money.
I can follow up in more detail. My understanding is it's funded, so it's likely in design. And
Gotcha.
there's a bunch of action on their agenda items. It probably means it's gonna be starting construction to some
Yeah.
level next year. And it's probably a 2 to 4 year build out, so you probably see some, I mean, it's, my understanding is it's funded. It's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
that's what I've heard too. All stuff.
So it's imminent.
Yep.
All right, are we all right to move on to our
Yeah.
question?
And then-
we'll do this and break, or do you want
That's
to break
on-
down?
No, that's up to council.
Everybody all right with one?
Hungry, want to do one more?
All right.
One more.
So, we talked about challenges, now obviously, let's look at the other side of things, positive momentum. What are the areas, that you can build on? What things are going well that you can build on, kind of maybe, I was gonna compliment Matt on the transition there, let's look at the positive side. What are the things that are going well that, you can build on going forward? Some of these might overlap with the things you talked about as different from last year, but thinking, even beyond last year, where do you have good positive momentum?
I think we have high skill level and passion on the employee side.
The conversations about retention, I think that's something we can keep building on.
We've got enough interest in this community, we can do what we want, you know? We can really, the demand is there, I mean, we have the opportunity to steer what it looks like. So, some of that's come up with some of the zoning and ordinance amendments that we've talked about in the past, and some of it we probably need to look at in the future to make further changes.
I think that, that what we talked about at the beginning with having a similar vision and moving that forward is really helpful to maintain the course. You can build on things when you keep moving forward like that.
Alan, can I ask a question? You said we can do what we want. For
Well,
instance,
if we-
what do you,
If we don't like what we've seen come through,
we can say no.
well, we can make
Code
We can make
changes.
proactive changes to our ordinances to change the future stuff to look what we want it to look like, and there's probably enough demand out there for the land we have that we can
Okay.
get away with doing it.
I mean, we had the one of my mom and G's, and we just said, no, that's
Right.
not what we thought, so.
But like
I like that.
Corcoran Farms,
Yeah,
I don't think it was anything what we all wanted it to really look like. But, so we had to react to what came to us. I think now we've probably learned from some of that, we can make changes in the future. And there's still gonna be enough demand that whatever changes we have, we can
They'll still
probably
come.
still have people coming, knocking on our door.
thanks.
Yeah, I think the overall increase in population in the Twin Cities in general really favors us because we're closer in than a lot of other places with comparable levels of land available. And I think the trick is to develop in such a way that we can preserve the kind of natural environment and amenities that we want and attract people who value that so that it can be stable long-term.
I think we are revenue neutral what I mean by that is we don't rely on outside sources for any of our funding. We don't need other people's money, because when you use other people's money, you sort of have to bend at their requests. So like, Rogers has had to capitulate on a bunch of what I would consider bad ideas, and they were held hostage by state infrastructure that they were gonna rely on. So, there's a lot that we can say no to with no repercussions from the county, Met Council, or the state. And it's huge.
I would say we've been able to buck the trend as far as public safety is concerned, and we're still a very safe city. And we've seen other communities not far from ours that have struggled, and they're losing that battle. And I think we're in a good position. I think once you lose that, that's a hard momentum to get. So I think the city's commitment to that is shown in the fact that we've still, while everyone else has faced struggles, we've still been at least going in the right direction the last few years. And a lot of cities haven't.
Yeah.
Part of it is because we can be choosy in some of the aspects of our town.
Technically still the safest,
Safest.
according to whatchamacallit.
Yeah. Delano's a sewer compared to what we're. I actually like your town, so just joking.
I think we can continue to build on, we're doing some really good financial planning, but as Jeremy mentioned, we can continue to work on pieces, but we're really starting to hone in and being able to think about how fees impact, we've done more fee analysis and some of those things that give us a chance to figure out where we're gonna go and with tax rate and the goals that we have.
Building the foundation.
What percentage of our town is developed now? Like 15% or 10% of, it's 36 square miles, I don't know how many.
That's a great question, I don't know the answer to that.
So like, we've got a lot of space left. It's sort of been like an experiment, ongoing experiment, and we're learning a lot and can use what we've learned to positively impact the rest of the needs, or the rest of the space, I guess.
Yeah, when you think about like 2015-ish being the first time we really had like Ravinia underway and learning how to deal with that as a city compared to what we know how to do now, develop, and just how to handle things and do things development-wise, I think learned a lot in not very long period of time. We'll keep, there's a lot more to learn, but
We do have a lot more to learn, but we're not bored.
yeah.
Staff level, I don't think council's bored. That's what we're seeing, we're learning a lot.
How many people are on?
No
Blind
one is,
listed?
no one is joining us virtually.
Nobody
It-
cares.
It,
Okay.
it was posted to the website.
Yep.
I'm
No,
not sure
I
that
saw
there's
it.
a ton of, generally, we don't,
It's a harder meeting to follow and
yeah.
Well, no, I
There's a ton
understand,
of,
I just, I'm,
feedback on, or like advertising for it, since it's very, open discussion, but we record it and want people to be interested.
Sounds like you're safe to say what you wanted to say.
no, I just,
It's still being recorded,
the
just to
thing
be
that's so
clear. It's still
frustrating
government data.
in the time I've been up here and stuff is the reactive way people are instead of the active involvement and understanding our comp plan and those kind of things. I just, so many people I talk to listen to our council meetings. Well, I don't wanna come to City Hall to go to those. You can get them online, you can listen whatever you want, you can speed through them, you can do whatever. That's disappointing to me that we've got a whole bunch of people that will jump the minute something's close to them, but they'll do nothing to understand. Like I said, just simple understanding of our comp plan. This is the plan, it's been pretty stable for, I'm gonna say 30 years, even though it might not have been out there that long, but a pretty good vision and pretty neat. But the thing that I always get surprised about is this just blindsided me, never expected it.
Yeah. And I don't know that that's a Corcoran specific problem. I think it's,
No, it's every
Human
city,
nature.
I agree with that 100%.
It's human nature, though. I mean, if people are left alone and things are going good in their mind, they tend to stick to what they're doing and do that, and they live within that scope. And
Yeah.
when people are impacted,
true.
that's when you react. I mean, you don't swat the mosquito that's not bothering you, you swat the one that's on your arm. And I think that happens with everybody. It probably happened with all of us, put us up here, right? So I don't fault them in that regard.
No, and I'm not, I don't know.
Not too many people would actively come to a comp planning meeting either and just sit there
Right.
and wonder what the color on the map's gonna look like in their
Yeah.
neighborhood
True.
10 years from now. But
Is this, so what? Us five are probably like, of the residents that live here, like, there probably are 15 people as interested in this stuff.
Probably. No, that's very true. I just,
Huh?
You think it's that high?
I don't know, so
how many the commissions are.
they kind of rely on us to be interested and take care of them.
when I moved into Maple Grove, in the first year, I was on the Long Range Improvement Committee. I wanted to get involved, I wanted to understand and stuff, because I knew at some point, development would get up in my part of town, and then I went and moved away from it, and all the open
Follow
space
you
from
there.
where I was to where I am now, I thought, I don't ever have to get involved again, and then all of a sudden, daughter and wife are sitting there, you gotta get doing that stuff because
Just kept on going.
the things we do for our loved ones.
Am I allowed to add one challenge topic?
Sure.
So it's on the previous, it would just be right away, the right away ordinance, I don't know if that's the right ordinance. Just with, I mean, it's super broad ordinance, but challenges with snow plowing the new developments, it's super tight. And how do we manage that? I know this was a different year with the snow, but it's really been, it's really a soft spot in our ordinance, I think, is a fair statement.
Saying they're too narrow? Should be wider?
No, well, just even how we manage our right of ways, so it could be anything from utilities to traffic control to, I don't know, what else is in that ordinance? I'm probably not the best one to answer it, but that's just one topic I want to float as a challenge coming forward is, we've seen it specifically to snow plowing and winter maintenance, where we have challenges. in that.
Need more space between the sidewalk and the road, kind of?
Well, it's even more, even ordinance related, right? It's processes on how we deal with cars that haven't been parked there for 48 hours, and is there a snow effect, way to disseminate or identify critical paths so we can better efficiently remove snow when we don't have obstructions? How do we manage information related to garbage cans? It's as much as garbage cans in the road. You wouldn't believe the amount of frustration we get at public works related to garbage.
I saw
cans,
it.
snowplow.
I
And
saw
it's
it driving
rural
around.
and- It's rural and in the new neighborhood, so.
Oh, sure.
When staff looks at the ordinance, our hands are we should just evaluate that as one of my recommendations.
Can we ban snowfall on Tuesdays?
We could, I mean, it's,
Yeah, we could put the garage, because the garbage cans on the outdoor side, right? Then
Somebody
you
just
can
got in trouble
fund-
for that today.
it just needs I just think it's a
Yeah,
recommendation for
and-
staff to look at. We may not want to change anything, but I think we should spend some time looking at it.
I drove around town today and our roads are too narrow, especially for that maintenance and public works and stuff. To even have one side parking right now, I drove by and there was barely enough room for my truck and the school bus that was coming the other direction, let alone somebody parked on the side of the road and stuff, so
I mean, it's.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
Communication, it could get into, right now, we still have, I mean, most of the new neighbors don't, but we still have 5 days a week, garbage pickup
Right.
options, I think. So
Oh, we do?
No.
I thought that was.
We shouldn't.
That's just
So we
Tuesdays
changed
now.
that as of the beginning of.
But I mean, it
Yeah.
unravels.
Some of the garbage can't stay out for 5
Yeah, they might be out there longer than
Yeah,
they're supposed to, but
Didn't we have no overnight parking on streets in the winter?
on some for sure.
We do, it needs to be signed for enforcement better, which we've talked about, which is an operational thing. Is that at the edges of the city? Is that on the parkways without polluting? So we need signage.
That actually came up the other day. So I know that there are some signs in Ravinia, I believe. Jeremy, do you know?
They say no parking this side of the street, but I don't think it's no parking between, midnight and 4 or anything like that.
Okay. I know we've had the conversation about the ordinance with people, but it did come up in Bellwether that they don't, at least the residents didn't seem to notice any signs being up there.
Yep.
So, yeah. that
As it
probably is
relates to the
something we need to
seasonal
look
stuff, yeah, it needs to be signed a little bit better, and that's a little bit of a policy level part of it, but we run into the issues even for fire access. It's hard with those roads when you have cars parked down one side of it and you have any amount of snowfall, just getting trucks through there. It gets worse when you get into the areas under construction where they don't have the no parking signs up. We haven't taken the road yet, and some of that is, the access is limited in some areas, but, the flip side of it is you have wider roads, which are gonna equate to faster speeds, so it's
Yeah.
the hard
And
part.
greater replacement costs too.
It's hard if you're gonna look at the road standard, and I think this was, I talked at length, with Kendra, and I had, when Ravinia was in its infancy, we talked about roadway widths and what are we doing and why are we doing it, and I think this was kind of where we landed was, what the best guess was based on her expertise, and it makes it a lot harder to get through if you have one car that parks on the side of the road where they're not supposed to. All of a sudden, you have a hard time getting your fire truck through, and
When you probably don't see it in Ravinia because of the curbs on it, but I get a kick out of the people that mark the side of their lawn and expect the plow guy not to push snow on it, right?
Yeah, and then either get the sand out in the spring or replace the sod in the spring. So as you get more and more lots, and it's an expectation thing, it's a
Yeah.
policy thing, we've been doing this 8 years, it's almost like a revisit of everything, and like our affirmation of this is what we wanna do.
They don't really own that piece, or they own that piece, but they don't have the right to prevent you from having your,
What's our right of way, so we can do that.
yeah, so you could just plow right through those
Yeah.
reflectors, not to say you should do
Try
that.
not to, but sometimes it happens.
Right.
Yeah, like when, yeah,
what we deal with more is when there's boulders. I mean, when people start actually putting the obstructions there that,
Oh, they're putting some big,
And
Big
if you get
chunks
that
in the
under,
way, aren't
and it
they?
got a big
Dangerous
snowfall,
for
that
those
could be,
guys.
Yeah, 'cause it's expensive on equipment
Bad.
if you hit it, and it's also bad on employees if it hooks it and spins it around or someone's coming the other way, so. I opened a can of worms.
you're,
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah,
it's a,
for
it's
sure.
a serious conversation.
Yeah. And it's got, I'm not prepared to, but it'd be something if we can at least dabble into.
I agree.
I think it's gonna come to you guys through comments anyway. You might not realize it's all kind of
Connected,
bundled into one
yeah.
policy, an ordinance.
makes sense.
Thanks for sharing that, I went back and put it on.
Okay.
I know it wasn't- I was out of line, so I tucked it on the road one just because of the
Okay.
space there. but, Any other positive momentum elements? Otherwise, I'll leave this up if we grab dinner and.
I don't know if we covered this kind of already, but tax base is kind of starting to diversify and definitely grow. We kind of covered it on our previous one of the questions, but just seeing some significant interest in commercial industrial that we have not seen before.
Well, and staff's creative in keeping costs down too, when they can, you know?
Looks good to me.
Do we have something in there related to downtown getting started?
No,
St.
but that would be a
Therese?
great,
I,
downtown is gonna have roads and.
I mean, just in
First
general,
downtown
building on
road.
that area, yeah.
we've executed,
Does it have a name yet?
It's
The road, or-
City Center Drive and 79th Place.
Yeah, which I think was the placeholder and we just never changed it.
Yeah, I went way back and went for a heritage play.
Oh, it's platted.
That's what I was,
Go through
Cork,
exercise
the
to change
first
it.
name of the guy, Frank's,
It's platted as
Frank Lane
City
or
Center
whatever,
Drive.
because it's Frank Corcoran.
Have we seen anything interesting come in
Frank Corcoran.
for south of there at all?
Frank Corcoran
Between
and
there and
Silo
10?
Way.
Something.
not,
Not
Yeah.
no concept plans or anything.
yeah,
Hmm.
no one's, had any.
I would think once St. Therese is in, or like at
Yeah.
least enough of it in where you can tell what it's gonna be, that we'd start to see some.
I mean, it's consolidating, the land is consolidating ownership, but other than
Yeah,
that,
that's true.
available on Hennepin County.
Okey dokey.
I would say Parks and Trails has a little bit of momentum with the Diamond Lake Regional Trail and the plan for City Park.
I'd like to see them get some momentum in their horse trails and things like that they've talked about for years. It seems like that's dying to the wayside.
The regional trails, you mean?
Well, they had off-road horse trails and things like that.
Yeah, there was gonna be
Compact.
one down along Bechtold Road and stuff.
Who's the,
yeah,
our Parks and Rec? Or
Yeah.
the- okay.
Oh,
And that's,
And Three Rivers.
yeah, as things have developed, it's like, those have kind of fallen to the wayside.
that's
Why I would love to see that inventory of easements and can we actually connect stuff? and
yeah. Be cool.
Focus on things, and I think, sadly, I think snowmobile trails are probably gonna die in this city as more things develop too.
They have a tweak on, was it last agenda or this coming one?
It's coming this week.
Yeah. But yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher each year for them, for
Right.
sure. Yeah, it's a good one to add. I know there's very early stages of another regional trail that the park districts, like, I think they're years out from even coming to cities, but I think you and I were at it, something, and we saw a map where,
The Weaver Lake Trail?
yeah, be an east-west trail through Corcoran. So, something to,
There are a couple of them, couple east, because there's one that goes
not regional,
through my property.
a
It's a
regional
regional
trail?
one, yeah. Was on the map for years and years.
I don't know. But I know this one would be more like the Diamond Lake Trail, but just an east-west version.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know, something, it's coming up eventually. Yeah, that list looks good to me.
Well, let's take a break now, and then we have one more question to ask.
Just shut off the recording.
Jess?
Still recording?
did there.
I wasn't even looking in the right spots.